Hi guys, in this video I will show you how to store HTML form data to MySQL database. So as you can see, currently I have opened my command prompt. So from here I'm going to create a folder by using this command mkdir, which stands for make directory. So I'm going to give the folder name as node and SQL. Now node and SQL folder is successfully created. After that, let's head over to that node and SQL folder by using this command cd, which stands for change directory. So if I click on enter, as you can see, currently we are in node and SQL folder. So I'm going to open this folder in VS Code by using code space dot command. So now as you can see, our folder is successfully opened in VS Code. So here I'm going to create a HTML file with name index.html. So I'm going to create a boilerplate by using this. So after that, I'm going to create a form tag, and inside this I'm going to create a label tag. So one is for username and another one is for, let me copy this label for two more. So and another label is for email and then another one is for password. So now let me change this from username to email and then replace this username with password. So also give a value for this for attribute. Let's give it as name and then here email and then here password. So now let's link this label tag for an input text. So I'm going to create an input tag, and here we have to specify ID attribute and we have to give the value that we have given inside this for attribute, which is name. Also have to add name attribute. I will tell you why we have to use this name attribute. So here I'm going to give the name as name. Now let me copy this for two times. Let me copy this and paste it for two times. One is for email tag, one is for, and another one is for password. So now let's change this ID with email and change the name value as well from name to email. Now let's change this ID from name to password and then value of the name attribute from name to password. So now all these label tags are successfully linked to an unique input tag. After that, let's add a button. Let's add a button like submit. So now let me open this on live server. So as you can see, currently our output is looking like this. So whenever user types their username, email, and password and clicks on this submit button, we have to call the server, and server is responsible for storing the data which user enters here to the MySQL database. So for that, we need some backend logic. So for that, to build a server, we need to use Express library. But in order to use Express library, first we have to initialize a node project inside our node and SQL folder. So for that, let me go to command prompt, and here as you can see, currently we are in node and SQL folder. So here I'm going to use this command called npm init -s. So by writing this command, a new node project will be initialized inside this node and SQL folder. So if I press enter, just wait. So now as you can see, a node project is successfully initialized. Now if I go to VS Code, as you can see here, we got a package.json file, which is coming after we have written this command. So now inside this, we are going to create a JavaScript file with name server.js. So now we are going to build our server inside this server.js file. So to build server, we have to use Express library. In order to use that Express library, first we have to install that. So for that, let me open command prompt, and from here we can simply use npm I, which short for install. So I'm going to install Express library as well as path library, and then node one. Just give me a few minutes, guys. After that, I will explain you why we need to use this packages. So if I click on enter, it will install all these three packages. Just wait. So now as you can see, those three packages are successfully installed. So to check whether those are installed or not, you can simply go to VS Code and go to package.json file. So here as you can see, inside this dependence properties, where we can able to see these three packages which we install from command prompt. So to check whether those packages are installed or not, you can simply check this dependencies property. This dependencies property will store all the libraries that we install. So now let's load this packages inside our server.js file. So I'm going to create a variable with name express, and to import a package, we have to use this require function. And inside this require function, we have to specify the library that we want to import. And I'm going to give it as express. After that, let's create another variable with name path, which will import the path library. So after that, let's create a variable with name app, and I'm going to reference express package to this app variable. So now whatever functions that are inside this express library, that will be used using this app variable. So now this path variable is referencing this path library. I will tell you why we have to use this path. Just give me some minutes. So now to run our server, we have to use a function called listen, which is available under this express library. As you can see, our express library is referenced by this app variable. That's why I'm using app. And after entering dot, as you can see, we can able to see this listen function. So click on that. After that, it will take the first parameter as a port number. So I'm going to give the port number as 4000. So our server will be going to be hosted on this port number 4000. And the second parameter will be a callback function. Here we can simply console a message like server listening. So now to run our file, we can simply use this node1 package. Node1. We can simply enter node1 and then enter the file name, which is our server.js. So this node1 will watch our files whenever there are changes inside this. So when we change anything inside our server.js file, this node1 package will watch that change and it will instantly update our server again. So instead of manually we are updating again and again, this node1 will help us to avoid that about the behavior. So as you can see, currently we are only seeing the server listening message, right? But if let's add three dots here. So now our server.js file is changed, right? So if you open command prompt, as you can see, that message is successfully displaying here without manually we are running our server again. So that is the use of this node1. So after that, let's open this in our Chrome. So for that, you can simply type localhost and then enter our port number, server port number, which is 4000, right? So if I click on enter, as you can see, we are getting this error, cannot get this route. So when we visit our server, like this port number, the entry point will be this route. So inside our server.js file, as you can see, we have not defined any route. We have not defined anything for this route. That's why it is displaying this message. So now inside this express library, we have a function called get. Let's use that app.get. So the first parameter for this get will be the root name. So whenever you visit this port number, the entry point will be this root. As you can see, it is forward slash. So here we have to give forward slash. So when we hit a request this root, we have to call a callback function. So let's call this callback function. And inside this, it will take two parameters, which is request comma response. So these two are objects. So inside the response object, we have a function called send, which is used to send a response to our user. So for now, I'm going to give it as inode. So now, if I click on refresh, as you can see, we are seeing this message. Because now, when a request received for this route, this message will be called, this function will be called, and inside that function, as you can see, we are sending a response with message inode. That's why it is displaying inode. So now instead of this inode, I want to display this form here. So for that, we have to use this path library. So this path library helps us to manage. So it helps us to work with files. So as you can see, our HTML code is inside this index.html file, right? This is a file, right? So to work with files, we have to use this path library. So here, instead of this, I'm going to create a variable with name HTML file. So here I'm going to use this path variable, and inside this path variable we have a function called join, and inside this join we have to specify the path of our HTML file. So here the first parameter will be the directory name. So at this point, as you can see, our index.html is here. As you can see, it is not currently in any subfolder, right? It is inside this node and SQL folder. So this directory name is referencing this node and SQL folder. And inside that folder, we are having this index.html, right? So we have to give that index.html as a second parameter for this join function. So we have to specify inside this inverted commas. So here you can simply write the HTML file name. So now we have to send this HTML file as a response to the user. So if I click on refresh, as you can see, our server is stuck because we are having some error here. As you can see, we are not sending any response, right? Then how it displays something here? That's why it is in loading stage right now. So now we have to add that response. So while sending files, we have to use this send file function. And inside the send file, we can simply specify the path of our HTML file. As you can see, we are giving the path here and we are storing that value inside our HTML file variable. So now we can simply use this HTML file variable inside this send file function. So if I give that HTML file, so now if I click on refresh, as you can see, we are seeing this HTML file inside our server. So now we don't need this. So now our HTML file is successfully rendering through our server. So after that, whenever you type something here and clicks on the submit function, we have to store this user entered details to MySQL database. So to connect MySQL database to our server, we have to use a package called MySQL 2. So to use that, first we have to install that. So simply go to command prompt. Let me stop the server by using Control C. So now our server is successfully stopped. Let me clear the screen by using the CLS command. So now I'm going to install that MySQL 2 package by using this npmi command and simply click on enter. So just wait. So now as you can see, MySQL 2 is successfully installed. So to check whether it is installed or not, you can simply go to VS Code and go to package.json file. So now as you can see under the dependencies property, you can able to see this MySQL 2 because we have installed that right now, just now, right? That's why it is displaying here. So now we have to load this MySQL 2 library inside our server.js file. So here I'm going to create a variable with name MySQL 2. And here we can simply use require function and load that MySQL2 package. So now this MySQL2 variable is referencing our MySQL2 library. So after that, inside this MySQL2 library, let me enter MySQL2, and inside this MySQL library, we have a function called create connection. So this create connection function will allow us to connect to a MySQL connection. So this will take an object, and inside this object, we have to specify all the connection details. So for that, simply open MySQL workbench. Let me open that. Just wait, guys. It will open. So now the interface of this MySQL workbench is looks like this. So if you don't have MySQL workbench, first you have to install MySQL. So for that, simply go to Chrome and type MySQL. So after that, from here you have to click on this MySQL link, and after that you have to click on this download section. After that, simply scroll down until you can able to see this MySQL community downloads option. Simply click on that. And from here, if you are a Windows user, you can simply click on this option MySQL installer for Windows. After that, MySQL server will be successfully installed into your system. After that, you have to set up your MySQL server. So you can while setting up the MySQL server, you are asked to be install the install some products. So under the product section, you can able to see this MySQL workbench and simply click on that MySQL workbench and install that. After that, MySQL workbench will be installed on your system. So after installing it, simply open that. After that, you will get an interface like this. So from here, this is a connection. As you can see here, this local instance MySQL AD, this is a connection. So we have to provide the details of this connection inside our server.js file. So we have to use a property called host. So inside this host property, we have to give the value of the host. So the value of the host is this local host. So the address of the local host is 127.0.0.1. We have to specify this under this host property, and then we have to provide another property called user. And inside this user property, we have to give the value of the user, which is this root. Here, as you can see, we can able to see root, right? That is the user. So to this user property, we have to give the value as root, and then we have to provide the password. So while setting up the MySQL server, it will ask you to enter the password. So you can enter the whatever password you want. So whatever you give there, that password you have to give here. So while setting the MySQL server, I have given my password as 1234, and I am giving that here 1234. So after that, we have to give the database property, and inside this database property, we have to give the value of the database name. So we have not created any database, right? So let's create database. So for that, simply click on this connection. After that, it will ask you to enter the password. So I'm going to enter my password 1234 and click on enter. So after that, you will get an interface like this. So from here, I'm going to create a database. So if you are familiar with SQL, I think you guys know about how to create database. So for creating database, we will use this command, right? Create and then database, and then we give the database name you want. So I'm going to give the database name as users. After that, you have to give this semicolon at the end of the command, right? And then to execute this, you have to click on this power button. So if I click on this power button, as you can see, it is saying that action created database users. It means database is successfully created. So to check, simply click on this refresh button. So if I click on refresh, as you can see, we got a database with name users. If I extract this, we are getting this tables views. As you can see, currently there are no tables as well as there are no views. So we are going to create a table after some time. So now we have successfully created a database with name users. So now we have to give this database name users inside this database property. simply give users here. So now to check whether this is installed or not, simply let's store this create connection inside a variable. So let's create a variable. I'm going to give the variable name as database. So now this database variable is referencing our MySQL database users. This users database is referenced by this database variable inside this server.js file. So now you can simply use this database variable, and this is an object, and inside this we have a function called connect. So this connect function will take a callback function, and inside this callback function we can specify a parameter like error. So inside this function we can simply check whether there is an error or not. For that you can simply use if condition, and inside this simply pass that error. So if there is any error, we are going to console that error, console.error. If you don't have any error, you can simply console a message like MySQL database is connected. Here simply enter return statement. So if there is any error, we are not going to this line. If there is no any error, this console statement will be printed. So now if I open command prompt and let me run this server by using nodemon and then server.js. So now if I click on enter, as you can see, we can able to see this message, MySQL database success connected, which means our MySQL database users is successfully connected to our server. So if I enter wrong password, instead of 1234, if I type 123, so if I open command prompt, as you can see, we got an error because I have given wrong password. Now this error will be triggered. Since there is an error, we are not going to console this message. Code will be stopped at this line because we are returning that error. So this code will not be executed. As you can see, if I open console, we cannot able to see this MySQL database connected message here. So if I type correct password, as you can see that message is coming here, which means MySQL is successfully connected. So now, whenever user enters the details and clicks on the submit button, we have to send a request to our server. So for that, we have to create a route to handle the user details, to handle the details which are entered by user. So for that, simply enter app and then use post method. So I have to use this post method because whenever user enters the details and clicks on the submit, we are going to post the details to our database, right? So we have to use this post method, and this post method will take the first parameter as a root name. So let's give the root name as handle form, and the second parameter will be a callback function. So now we have to give this root inside this action attribute. So here whatever you give this root name, that root name will be given. You have to give that root name inside this action attribute. So I'm going to give this handle form. Also you have to specify method attribute, and then method will be a post. Here as you can see, we have created a post method, right? So if you give post method here, you must give post here. So now whenever user submits the form, so if user clicks on the submit button, a request will be made to our this file root, this handle form root. So when we receive a request for this handle form root, so we are going to call this function. So this function will take two parameters, which is request and then response. So now here we have to get the details which are entered by user from here. So to get the details, we have to use a middleware, which is, let me use that middleware here. So let me add a comment, middleware for parsing the form details. So now here we have to use a middleware called, we have to use this use function, and inside this we have to use this express module, and inside this we have a property called URL encoded, which will take a parameter as an object which is extended. So we have to give a value for this extended as a true. So when we add this middleware, we can able to get the details which are entered by user from this form under an object called request.body. So here let me console that request.body. So when we use this middleware, we can able to get the details which are entered by user from this form under this requested body object. So now as you can see I'm consoling that object. So if I open command prompt, as you can see we are not able to see any details because we have not typed anything here, right? So now let me enter my details like Hemant and then email. So I'm not going to add any styles for this form, guys, because the purpose of this video is only to show how to store form details to MySQL database. So if this form is looking ugly, please ignore that, guys. So here I'm going to enter the password as 1234. So now if I click on this submit and if I open command prompt, as you can see, we are not able to see any message here. That's because we are not sending any response inside this handle form. So we have to send a response to the user. So if you don't send any response, you cannot able to see anything for this console statement. So let's send a response like response dot send registration successful. So now let me enter the details again. Let's go back. So now if I click on let me refresh. Let me click on refresh and enter the details again. Uh, Let me enter my email and then some random password. So now if I click on submit, as you can see, the root is changed, right? It is showing us handle form because in the action attribute inside this HTML file, as you can see inside this action attribute, we have given this handle form. That's why it is showing here. After submitting the form, the root is changed with this handle form. So this handle form will be triggered since it has received a request. This function will be executed, this arrow function, and inside that function we are sending a response as registration successful. That's why as you can see it is showing us this registration successful message. And also we are consoling a statement, right? So this console.log request.body, in order to see that we have to go to this command prompt. And here as you can see the request.body is consoling this object, and inside that object we are having this name, email, password which we enter from our form. As you can see here under the username we have typed Hemant, right? That's why it is displaying Hemant. And in the password field we are typing 1234, and inside this email field I have I have entered my email which is Hemant@gmail.com. That's why it is showing it here. So we are getting these details only because of this middleware function. So let me comment this. So now if I enter, so if I click on refresh, let me enter my name again, Hemant@gmail.com, and then password. So now if I click on submit, as you can see, we can successfully able to see that message. But if I open command prompt, as you can see, it is showing that undefined. So this console.log request.body is returning us undefined because without using this middleware function, we cannot able to get the details which are entered by user from the form. So that is the use of this middleware function. So now we have to store the details entered by user inside our database, right? So for that we have to create a table. So for that, let me remove this. So now we have to use that users database. So inside this, to create a table, we use this command, right? Create table. So let's give the table name as users details. And inside this, as you can see, we are having three fields, right? One is for username, one is for email, one is for password. So here we have to give three fields. Let's give it as name. So the data type of name is string, right? So here after the name we have to give the data type. So for strings we have to use this varchar, which means variable character, and this 255 represents the maximum length of this name. So we cannot give more than, so the name of the length must be less than this 255. That is the use of this 255. So after that we are having another field for email, right? So the data type of email is string again, so I have to use this variable character and then 255. And then we are having another field for password, right? So I have to give password here. So the data type of this password is again a string, so I have to give variable character and then 255. So now if I hit this execute button, power button, a table will be created. As you can see, it is showing that. So as you can see under this table section, we cannot able to see the table, right? So to get a table, we have to click on this refresh button. So if I click on refresh, as you can see, we got a table with name, user details, because we have given the, as you can see here, we have given the table name as user details, right? That's why it is displaying it here. So now let me remove this. So to get the details, so So to get the data from the table, we use this command, right? Select, and then we give the columns that we want. Since I want all columns, I'm going to give the star. So the star will give all the data which is inside this user details table from, and then we have to give the table which is this user details, user details. So now if I execute this, it is showing user details not existed. Select star from user details. It is throwing us an error, guys. Okay, as you can see the name, as you can see the name of the table is users details, right? But here I have given user. That's why it is throwing us an error. Let me enter S here. So now if I execute this, as you can see, we got this table, and inside this table we don't have any data, right? That's why it is displaying this. So here we are going to, so under this email name and password field, we are going to store the details which are entered by user here. So for that, let me remove this console. We don't need this for now. Let me remove this as well. So I'm going to create try catch blocks. So this catch block is used to catch the errors, guys. So inside the catch block, I'm going to console the error which will be received from the try block. So if there is any error from this try block, that error will be catched under this catch block. So here, as you can see, I'm consoling that message as well as send a response to the user as well, like registration unsuccessful. So now let's write our logic inside this try block. So here first we have to capture the values that are entered by user from here. So those values are available under requested body object, right? So here I'm going to use object destructing. So if you are familiar with JavaScript, I think you guys know about object destructing, which is used to extract the values into a separate value, into a separate variable. So here I'm going to enter name, comma, email, comma, password, and we have to reference our object which is requested body. Here I have to use const, guys. So now this name will store the value that user enter under this username field, and this email will be stored under this email variable, and the password which user enters here will be available under this password variable. So after that, we have to write a command, write a SQL command. So here I'm going to create a variable with name SQL command, and here I'm going to enter the command that is used to add the values that user enter here into the user's details table. So to insert the values into a table, we use insert into, and then we give table name, right? We use that command. So here we have to use insert and then into, and here we have to provide the table name, guys. Here we have to provide the table name, right? So we have given the table name as user's details, right? So here we have to give user details, users details. And as you can see, under the users details table, we have three columns, right? Email, name, password. So let me give name, comma, email, comma, password. So to specify values for this properties, we use this values, right? And here we have to provide the values of this name, email, password. So here I'm going to use question mark, three question marks. Let me tell you why. So for some security reasons, we shouldn't enter the user input values under this command. That's why I have to use this question mark. So this is a placeholder. So this first placeholder is will be referenced by this name variable, and this second placeholder will be referenced by this email variable, and this third placeholder will referenced by this password variable. So now so I have to give the values for this question mark while executing this command. So to execute this command, we have to use a function called query, which is available under this database object. So here we have to give database, and inside this we have a function called query. So this query function will allow us to execute this SQL commands. So this query will take the first parameter as an SQL command. As you can see, we have written SQL command here, and we are storing that SQL command under this SQL command variable. So here we have to give SQL command variable. And in the second parameter, we have to give values for this placeholders. So as you can see, we are having three values, right? We have to give three values. So we have to use array. And inside this array, we have to pass the values that are user entered from the form. So the details entered by user from this form will be available under this variables, right? Name, email, password. So here we have to give that name, email, password. So now this query function can able to get these values while executing this command, and it will give this name value for this first placeholder, and it will give the first email value for the second placeholder, and it will give this password value for this third third placeholder. After that, the third parameter will be a callback function. Here you can specify two parameters. So one parameter is error, and the second parameter will be a result. So here you can simply check whether we are getting error or not. For that, you can simply use if. So if there is any error, we are going to console the that error message by using this console.error function, and then pass error. And also have to return a response to the user, like let's send a response like registration unsuccessful. After that, if there is no any error while executing this SQL command, you can simply console the message of result as well as send a response to the user by using this response object, and then send like registration successful. So let's check whether we can able to get these details under our user details table. Let me remove this. So currently, as you can see, we are not having any values here, right? But let me click on refresh. Let me see whether our server is running or not. As you can see, our server is running. Now, let's enter the details, and then email, gmail.com. Now, let me enter my password, 1234. And if I click on submit, as you can see, we can able to see this registration successful message, which is our SQL command is successfully executed. So now, if I go to MySQL workbench, as you can see, currently we are not having the values that we have entered from the form. Now, if I execute this, we are getting an error, guys. Oh, sorry, here it should be others details. So now, if I execute this, as you can see, we have successfully got the details which you have entered in the form. Hamant at the rate gmail.com 1234, right? Here we have given that, right? And after submitting that, we are successfully able to see the details under our database. So now let's enter another details to check whether we can able to get those details in the database or not. So let me go to Chrome, and here I'm going to type another username like Rajesh, and Rajesh at the rate gmail.com, and then some random password like 5678. So if I click on submit, as you can see, we are getting this message. So now let me go to MySQL workbench. So if I execute this command again, we are going to get the details with name Rajesh here. So if I execute this, as you can see, we got those details here. So now let me explain more about this path library, guys. So let's create a folder inside this node and SQL folder. So I'm going to give the folder name as HTML files. So I'm going to move this index.html to this HTML files. So now if I click on refresh, as you can see, we are not getting the file because now the path of the HTML index.html file is changed, right? So now this directory name will reference this node and SQL folder, and after that we are passing index.html. But this path.join function cannot able to get this index.html file because it is inside this HTML files folder, right? That's why it cannot able to get this index.html. So to access that, we have to pass the second parameter as the folder name. As you can see, this index.html is stored inside this HTML files folder, right? So here we have to give HTML files folder, HTML files, and then give comma. So now if I click on refresh, as you can see, we can successfully able to get the form. So I hope you will understand this video, guys. If you cannot understand, please comment down so that I will try to explain it again. So that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching.